Right. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, or depending on where you are, good morning. Can see lots of folks joining, so we'll give it just a moment before we get started. Right, it looks like it's
Borja,
slowing
by the way, we're in the midst
Yep.
of like a horrible storm here.
Adam, I think we're starting the webinar.
It's a true statement.
Yes. All right, it's slowed down a little bit. So happy to have you here joining us for the webinar on computer science for incoming students. We have a handful of guests from the computer science department who are going to go over some details of the placement process, the major, minor, more department information, and some other details for you. Before we kick it off, I'm going to just give a brief reminder that if you have not been invited to the computer science Canvas page, which provides information about the placement process, that is likely because you have not claimed your CNET ID or set up your UChicago email address. So please, if you have not gotten that, make sure you have worked through those steps, or if you're having any trouble and realized that you're not getting any UChicago emails yet, please touch base with your admissions representative and they can help you with that process. So I'm going to kick it off by having Blaze introduce himself first and maybe share a little bit about who else from the department is joining us too.
Great. Thanks, Carrie. And most importantly, welcome everyone to the CS department as well as to today's webinar. So I'm Blaze I recently started as Director of Undergraduate Studies for our department. But I've been at UChicago quite a while. I've been at UChicago for 10 years. And my research really focuses on computer security, privacy, ethical AI. And I'm joined by Borja and Adam, and we also have Jessica on screen. And actually, I'll let Borja, then Adam introduce themselves really briefly. Borja, would you like to introduce yourself? Yeah.
Sure. So my name is Borja Sotomayor. If you have been in doing or joined the sort of placement exam sort of Canvas site, you've probably gotten a bunch of messages from me. I teach in the department. I'm a senior instructional professor, but I'm also the chair of the placement exam committee, and I'll be sort of telling you more about the placement process and answer any questions you might have later in the webinar.
All right, Adam.
Hi, everybody. My name is Adam Shaw. I'm a senior instructional professor in the computer science department. I am also the computer science major advisor, so I'd be happy to meet with any of you to discuss your plan, whether you are a major or just someone who's thinking they might be a major or just a plain old college student. So you will have opportunities to meet me throughout the year, and I am looking forward to meeting some or all of you.
Great. Thanks, Borja and Adam. And Jessica Garza, who's our Associate Director of Undergraduate Studies, unfortunately couldn't join us today, but you'll get to know Jess as well. All right, so next, I'd like us to talk through essentially what it means to major or minor in computer science at UChicago. We offer two degrees for computer science majors, BS for our Bachelor of Science and a BA, Bachelor of Arts. And in the coming slides, I'll go through how the requirements differ for those two. We also offer a minor computer science. And of course, you could just take courses in computer science if you're interested and choose not to follow any of these degree paths. We also offer a number of graduate programs, a joint bachelor's and master's program, what we call the BXMS, as well as some master's programs and a PhD program. We won't be talking about those today, however. All right. All right, next slide, Maura. Yeah, thank you. So our we'll start with the major requirements for the Bachelor of Science degree. So to get a Bachelor of Science typically involves 15 computer science courses. Right. So we have an introductory sequence, CMSC 14100 through 14400. As you'll see in the coming slides, we typically use the shorthand CS 141, 142, 143. Right. So that's as you see in the bottom of this funnel. We have three theory classes: Theory A, Theory B, and Theory C, which I'll get to as well as the systems requirement and a machine learning requirement. So it's essentially you have these four courses in the introductory sequence: three theory courses, a systems course, a machine learning course, right? And then you have six additional courses. We require for the Bachelor of Science, the BS degree, a specialization. And you see above in gray the specialization areas. So we offer specializations in computer security and privacy, computer systems, data science, human-computer interaction, machine learning, programming languages, and theory. Right. So what you do for the Bachelor of Science degree is you choose one of those areas, and we have specific requirements for three courses in each of those areas. Right. And you then have three additional electives. Our courses for advanced undergraduates beyond the intro sequence are typically numbered starting with the prefix 2. We call those the 200 level courses. Right? And so, by and large, pretty much everything in the 200 level is going to count as an elective. And so this will give you a chance to explore different areas, in our computer science major. We also offer a Bachelor of Arts or BA degree. Right. So what you see is different is in the requirements, we still have the intro sequence in Theory A and Theory B, but we no longer have a Theory C requirement. There's no systems requirement and there's no machine learning requirement. Right. So in other words, we have three fewer required courses. And then instead of requiring you to choose a specialization area, we give you a lot more flexibility. We have you choose 8 electives spanning 5 different areas, where the areas are defined as the different specialization areas, as well as the other curriculum areas listed above: quantum computing, robotics, software engineering, visual computing. Right. And so when you think about this conceptually, the Bachelor of Science degree, the previous major requirements I outlined, really help you build depth in a specialization area. Whereas the Bachelor of Arts degree helps you build, in particular, breadth across specialization areas, really get a wide view of what computer science means at the University of Chicago. All right. We also offer a minor. So the minor includes 7 courses. I neglected in the previous slide to note that the Bachelor of Arts degree is 14 computer science courses, as opposed to the 15 for the Bachelor of Science degree. The minor requirement is just 7 courses. The only strict requirements here in the intro sequence are CS 141 and 142, the first 2 of 4 classes. And then you choose 5 electives, which can actually, among your electives, include 143 and 144, but they don't have to. Right? And this lets you get a taste of computer science at UChicago. Right? And so let me just start talking a little bit more about the introductory sequence. And so as I mentioned, essentially the BS and BA degrees for the major require 4 courses: CS 141, 142, 143, 144. And as I just mentioned on the previous slide, the minor only strictly requires 141 and 142. That said, there are many 200 level, essentially these advanced electives, that do require 143 or 144 as a prerequisite. So a number of computer science minors do choose to take 143 or 144. 143 and 144. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague Borja, who will talk you through essentially what happens in each of these introductory sequence courses.
Sure. Thank you, Blaise. So I am involved in teaching mostly CS 142, but I'm also sort of like involved in a number of other aspects of the intro sequence. And the 142 instructors are always sort of like in touch with the 141 instructors. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what these classes entail and what their approach is. So CS 141 is our sort of introduction to computer science class, where it is a class that is taught in Python, but you shouldn't think of it as a Python programming class or a programming class. The goal of the class really is to help you build computational skills such as abstraction, decomposition, some basic algorithms and data structures. And by necessity, we do have to cover a bunch of more programming language sort of like oriented topics. The class doesn't expect any knowledge of any prior knowledge of computer science or programming. So if you are someone who didn't take any computer science, who doesn't really know anything about programming, etc., this is the class where you would want to start. CS, 1 second. There we go. CS 142 is partially a direct continuation of CS 141. It sort of covers some more advanced concepts in programming, like trees, graphs, typing, functional programming, and so on. But one of the sort of distinguishing factors in CS 142, and again, even though you do a lot of programming in these classes, it's really about teaching you how to solve, computational problems, how to think computationally, how to take very complex problems and sort of translate them into computational solutions. CS 142 is also where you start learning some software development, where we start sort of teaching, principles of software design, software testing, and so on. And the class, for example, involves developing a game in a four-person team. Both of these classes also involve learning a number of other sort of like supplementary skills, like, you learn how to, work your way around a Linux terminal, how to use Git and GitHub, and so on and so forth. There was a question on the Q&A about whether these classes, CS141 and CS142, if depending on what professor you go to, like you get like a completely different class. These classes, 141, 142, are essentially centrally managed. So no matter what section you go into, you're going to get, it's the same syllabus, same assignments, everyone takes the same exams, and so on. To sort of like ensure that everyone kind of like has the same footing as they move on to the rest of the intro sequence. So now I'm going to turn it over to Adam, who will tell you about CS143 and CS144.
Thank you, Borja. I just taught 143 in the spring quarter and will teach 144 in the autumn quarter. So I think I'm qualified to do these slides. In CS 143, it says C programming, which is true. It is not a programming course exactly, although it is a class where we learn a language that is new to many of the students in the class. But writing code in C puts you a little more directly in touch with what the computer is doing at a moment by moment basis in a way that is not as clear in Python, not as much on the surface. So just to read down the elements of 143 on the slide, we learn how computers work in detail. We learn about bits, bytes, and memory. That is when a computer stores a number or an image or a piece of music or a movie. It's all ultimately represented in a similar way with electrical signals, and we start to get into the details of how that's done. So we talk about representations of numbers, strings, data structures, pointers and direction, memory allocation and memory management, and parallel programming with pthreads. Some of that is kind of jargon at this point, I would imagine, to many of you. But it's all about getting a more precise idea of what the computer is doing when you ask it to run a program. Next slide, please. CS144, Introduction to Architecture and Operating Systems. This is a course that assumes a high level of familiarity with the C programming language, which, not by coincidence, you will have just learned in 143. And we get into even greater detail about how the computer actually carries out its work. There are a lot of fascinating design principles and really clever ideas about how to make a modern computer work and do what it's got to do that are not obvious and not necessarily immediately intuitive. We try to teach them as intuitively as we can. But this is 144 is a chance to really look very closely at precisely what the computer is doing when you write not only a C program, but any kind of program. So we talk about assembly language programming, memory hierarchy and caching, system calls, processes and concurrency. Again, that's a bit of jargon, but it will give you an even greater familiarity with what the computer is doing when it runs a program and give you some new tools. For example, writing systems that can run several programs at the same time and have those programs communicate with one another. So the entire arc of 141 through 144 is really to bring you in a much more intimate acquaintance with your computer so you can then do great things with it. Next slide, please.
Okay, so now I'm going to tell you a little bit because this is a question that probably will, a lot of you are sort of like thinking about. Before we move on to talk about the placement exams, what is the sort of AI usage, policy, or what does AI usage or AI tools look like in the CS major and in our classes? So our department doesn't have an across-the-board policy on AI usage, so there's no sort of neither prohibition across the board or mandate that everyone has to use AI. It's really left up to individual instructors to decide what policies to set in their classes, depending on the learning objectives of their classes, like what is going to make more sense in the context of that sort of like individual class. Our intro classes, the classes that you just sort of like heard about, are really structured to help you learn without the use of AI. Like I mentioned earlier, again, even though you're going to do a lot of programming in these intro classes, the goal really is to help you think about, how to think computationally, how to, design, solutions to problems, how to decompose large problems into smaller pieces, stuff like that. And we really feel that it is important that you do that without relying all the time on AI. Now, as you progress through the major, later classes are going to have more permissive policies. I can give you a concrete example, which is I teach a software development class, a 200 level class, which I'm in the process of updating for next year. And that will be a class where students will be able to use AI without any limits. Like it will actually essentially be a how do we do software development, how do we do software engineering, assisted by AI tools. So you are probably going to encounter AI at various points, AI tools and how to use AI at various points in your education. But in the intro sequence, again, we really feel that in the intro sequence, it is important that you learn without the assistance of these AI tools, that you build a solid foundation that you can then use to sort of to take to your other classes in the CS major. For those of you who might be concerned about, well, will I have access to these tools in the classes that do require them? In case you haven't heard, the university recently announced that every student in the college is going to get a free, Claude Pro subscription. So you would just get that by virtue of being a student at the university. So next up, we're going to tell you a little bit about the placement exams. I know that some of you probably have already been involved in this sort of like process, but for those of you who haven't, or maybe those of you who are thinking about taking the second placement exam that is happening in a few weeks, we want to give you sort of like a big picture view of the placement exams, and then again answer any questions you might have. So if you are someone who already knows, has had exposure to computer science, who knows programming, you're not required to start in CS 141. We do offer a series of placement exams that determine what is the correct starting point for you. These are exams that are conducted online. They involve solving a number of programming problems where we expect you to sort of submit working running code that solves those programming problems. Now, let's say that you are, coming into the college and you don't know whether you should go to CS 141 or take the CS1 exam. So unlike some of the other placement exams, you're not required to take the CS exam. So if you are someone who just doesn't have experience in programming or in computer science, you should just go into CS 141 if you want to, learn that material. The CS exam really is for students who, again, already have that prior experience. Now, depending on whether you pass or don't pass the first exam, if you don't pass it, like you would just place into CS 141. If you pass it, you would place into CS 142, but you would have the option of taking a second exam that would determine whether you can place further in the sequence. And for those of you who have already taken the CS1 exam, we've already had the two sort of like main sittings of that exam. You might now be faced with the choice of, well, what do I do? Do I go into CS 142? Do I go take the CS2 exam? Or maybe in some cases, it might make sense to go into CS 141, even though you placed into CS 142. So one thing, I think one of the main things you want to consider when making this decision is that CS 142 is going to assume that you're already familiar with a lot of the platforms and a lot of the topics that are covered in CS 141, including, being familiar with using the Linux terminal, using Git, and so on. If you are on the CS2 exam Canvas site, we do have a page there that sort of explains these are all the things you're going to need to read up on and catch up on before you go into CS 142. So we do give you a lot of materials and a lot of guidance on how to prepare to sort of jump straight into CS 142. But some students do find that a little bit daunting, especially students who maybe don't have a background in Python and are coming in with a different programming language. So I think you want to consider this. Obviously, is going to be a very individual decision, but sometimes you might want to consider whether CS 141 is going to be a better choice, to sort of be able to onboard into all of these, platforms and topics and so on. Additionally, if you don't have any sort of software development experience, like design testing, stuff like that, we definitely recommend that instead of taking the CS2 exam and jumping ahead to CS 143, you just take CS 142 because again, you'll be exposed to those, more software development, software engineering related topics. But let's say you do take the CS2 exam. That means that you then place into CS 143 and have the option to take the CS3 exam. And if you take the CS3 exam, if you pass it, there are no further exams. There's no exam to sort of test out of CS 144. So at that point, you either place into CS 143 or CS 144. The CS1 and CS2 exams can be taken in Python, Java, or C++. They test material that is roughly covered in CS 141 and CS 142. The CS3 exam can only be taken in C. And really, unless you already know C, unless this is something that you already learned and are familiar with what is covered in CS 143, you shouldn't plan to take the exam. But unlike the first two exams, it actually involves developing a small programming project that we give you, 2 weeks to sort of work on, and then we sort of grade that and decide whether you can go into 144 or 143. Each of the exams has a Canvas site with lots of documentation, lots of information about the exams. If you're an incoming student, you've been automatically added to the CS1 exam. So if you want more details about the exam, make sure that you go to Canvas and check whether you accept that invite to the CS1 exam Canvas site. Now, I mentioned the main two sittings of this exam have already taken place. We do have a final sitting on September 8 or 9. So if you do want to take the CS1 exam, you are still on time to take it, but it would be in September after pre-registration and so on. The CS2 and CS3 exam Canvas sites obviously are by invitation only if you pass the preceding exam. One thing that I will point out, because this is a difference with a couple of other departments, we know that in some other departments, you receive your placement and then, you can go to certain people in the department to plead your case or explain why you should be placed sort of differently. We have a very strict policy in the CS exam that the placement you receive from this exam is final. You can't go to the department, you can't go to individual instructors and sort of, argue that your placement should be sort of different. We won't look at any coding. You won't look at coding portfolios. You won't look at any sort of non-U Chicago coursework to sort of alter your placement. Another thing that you should take into account, because this is something that trips people up sort of occasionally, is that just because you place out of CS 141 or 42 or 43 doesn't mean that you automatically can register for the classes that have those classes as a prerequisite. So let's say that you took the CS1 exam, you've placed into CS 142, which means you won't have to take CS 141. That doesn't mean that you automatically can register for classes that have CS 141 as a prerequisite. You first have to earn what is called the back credit. So, for example, if you place into CS 142, once you complete CS 142, you then get that sort of credit automatically for 141, which kind of unlocks any classes that have 141 as a prerequisite. And similarly, as you go down the sequence, the Canvas site, has a whole little section about how the back credit works in case this is something that might affect your course planning. And with that, I will turn it back to Blaze.
Thanks, Borja. Great. And so now that you know what happens in the CS 140s and kind of how to jump into an appropriate point of the sequence if you have prior CS experience via the placement exam, now you're probably all ready to go sign up for a class, right? So when does this happen? All right, so let's start with the intro sequence. So this, it's typically the intro sequence, CS141 is offered in the fall and winter quarters, right? CS142 in the winter and spring. So, okay, before I get more into this, you might say like, okay, well, I see there's, different courses offered at different times. Why have we designed it this way, right? And so I'll basically, before first I'll tell you, these will seem like big courses. We have in a typical year, about 500 students taking 141 or 142, about 300 students taking 143, 144. That said, you're not going to be in a classroom with 300 or 500 students. This is one of the hallmarks of University of Chicago's approach to computer science. You're going to be in a classroom with typically 50 or 60 students with your instructor. Right. And so you're going to have an opportunity, and I'll come back to this later in the presentation, to get to know your instructors and classmates quite well. All right. So now I was about to promise you arrows. Now we have arrows. Right. So we've designed this sequence and when we offer courses such that if you want to start CS141 in the fall, then, okay, great. You can take 141 in the fall, move to 142 in the winter, and then 143 in the spring. Similarly, if you had started 141 in the winter quarter, you could take 142 in the spring. Next slide. Right. And so then kind of next slide, proceed essentially to 143 in the fall. Right. So we essentially have the classes structured such that it really makes a lot of sense to start in fall or winter, and you kind of continue in that sequence, right? And you don't have to do that, but this is essentially the most logically designed time to take these courses. Right. So some of the other courses that you're going to be thinking about early in your computer science career here at UChicago. First, discrete math and algorithms. So these are theory A, theory B courses, respectively. So discrete math and algorithms. So discrete math, which is 271, more formally CMSC 27100, is offered in the fall and winter, whereas algorithms 272 offered in the winter and spring. Another popular class is mathematical foundations of machine learning. And that's typically offered in the fall and the spring. So we'll put aside mathematical foundations of ML and let's focus on discrete math 271. Right, so this is something we actually just introduced in the last few years. We now offer a discrete math placement exam that is completely optional. You don't have to take this. And we offer this for we find we have a lot of mathematically sophisticated students taking discrete math, and we want to say, okay, well, maybe you already through your mathematics coursework, if you've done very advanced mathematics coursework, proof-based mathematics, logic, number theory, those sorts of topics, you might be able to place out of CS271 and start in 272, or you might actually take the exam and say, well, you maybe don't have exactly all of the background to place out of 271 discrete math, but we'll recommend you for an honors version of discrete math, CMSC 27130. Right, and again, this is non-binding. Even if you don't take the placement exam and you want to enroll in honors discrete math, you can choose to do that. So if you do take this discrete math placement exam, and you place out of discrete math 271, what happens is you can just go directly to CMSC 272 algorithms. And what that means is you actually then replace that discrete math with one more advanced computer science theory course. So this doesn't reduce essentially how many courses you need to take for the major. What it does is it says, okay, well, if you would be bored in discrete math, we want to put you in a course that's more appropriate for your mathematical background. All right. So now let's move beyond discrete math. So kind of how do you get into the upper level courses? As I mentioned before, those beginning with the digit 2, the prefix 2. And so these 200 level courses, our shorthand for this is upper level courses. Many, but not all of them require CS 142, 143, 144. Some you can begin taking, after just 141 or 142. And so specifically, there are 200 level courses where, you're still taking the intro sequence. You've done, let's say, 141 and 142. And then you sign up for 143, and you also sign up for some 200 level course where the prerequisite is only 142. Right, and that's something that we find is very common. And you don't have to. You know if as you're planning your course adventure through the University of Chicago, you could essentially say, okay, I'm going to first do the intro sequence, and then once I'm done, move to the upper level courses again. But you can choose to do them essentially in parallel as well. Right. So once you finish CS 142, that's when you can be taking 271, discrete mathematics. Right. And then CMSC 253, Mathematical Foundations of Machine Learning, requires CS 141. So essentially, once you get started in the intro sequence, the world starts opening up to you in terms of the upper division, the upper level courses that you can take. I also wanted to specifically call out a course that's new this fall. It's only being offered this in the fall this year. AI for All, Societal Perspectives, Concepts, and Applications. And this does not have any prerequisites in the intro sequence. That said, it also does not count as for the computer science major, but it would count as a college elective. But what this course is it's essentially an exposure to AI topics taught by my colleagues Ben and Heather. Essentially how AI is touching a lot of different disciplines, what's happened technologically in the last 10 to 15 years of AI machine learning development. And that's, so essentially if you're really raring to go already, you're also welcome to sign up for that course. I want to note that every quarter, as you go through this pre-registration process, you can enroll in at most 2 computer science courses through pre-registration. And so sometimes we'll have very ambitious students say, well, I want to pre-register for 3 or 4 computer science courses. We don't allow that. The reason why is we want to make sure that everyone in a given quarter who wants to take computer science courses can do so and make sure that people are able to be making good progress towards their degree, their major, their minor. Right. That said, after pre-registration, you might resolve into 1 or 2 computer science courses. If there are still seats in the add drop period, then you're able to add more. So we don't cap you at 2 computer science courses, right? But it's the pre-registration phase. That said, what I found is, even for very ambitious and hardworking students, having more than 2 computer science courses at a time is often a regrettable decision, in many but not all circumstances. And so if during the add drop period that follows pre-registration, if there's a course that has open seats, if you had asked a student 5 or 10 years ago who was majoring or minoring in computer science at U Chicago, how often does that happen? 5 or 10 years ago, the answer was not very much. These days, we've grown our faculty tremendously over the last decade. We have, subsequently grown our course offerings. We actually do often have a lot of classes with open seats, especially at the 200 level. Right. And, the classes that are where we don't have enough available seats, we handle through a central computer science department waitlist, waitlist.cs.uchicago.edu. And don't have to worry about that right now. When the time comes for the waitlist to be relevant, you'll get appropriate emails about how to approach that. Another thing is, sometimes we see students do is look at this year's course, schedule and say, oh, there's a course that looks really interesting in the winter, especially at the 200 level. Next winter I'll take it, or 3 winters from now I'll take it, and they start planning out their schedule for their entire tenure at U Chicago. Right. I want to warn you that the course schedule varies from year to year just because a particular course, especially outside of the intro sequence, is offered at a particular time in one year. It doesn't mean that that course will be offered at the same time in a subsequent year, perhaps or even at all. And these are the kinds of questions as you're trying to think through this. I'm happy to talk to students on an individual basis and give some guidance about if those of you who are really trying to plan ahead. I also wanted to add some guidance about getting to know your professors. As I mentioned before, one of the hallmarks of our computer science program at U Chicago is that courses tend to be very small. In the intro sequence, you're going to be in a room with typically at most 60 classmates. Right. Some of the higher level upper division courses, these 200 level courses, particularly in very specialized areas, like you might have 10, 20, 30 students in the course. And this is an opportunity to really get to know your professors, have people who will write you strong recommendation letters for future opportunities, have people who will kind of, when they hear of a startup hiring or a company looking for people with particular skill sets, will pass that on to you. And so I want to really encourage you to get to know your professors. That's, again, something that I think is really special about our department compared to other institutions which I've worked or studied. I also want to encourage you to get involved in research. There are various labs in our department who are willing to take first year, second year students and get them involved in research. And we've had a lot of research success, not just among graduate students, but among undergraduate students in recent years, with undergraduate students being lead authors of papers, winning national awards. In the last about 5 years, 2 of the national winners of the Computing Research Association's top undergraduate researcher have been UChicago undergrads. And so something I want to really encourage. And then as you move on in the program, there are a lot of opportunities to work on research projects very closely with faculty members. All right. Next slide, please, Borja. Right. So you might now, so we're going to be turning over a couple more slides to a Q&A. We have some more things to tell you first. But as you think about, post this presentation, after this webinar, where should you turn? So if you have general questions about non-computer science coursework in particular, you should be turning to your assigned college advisor. If you have questions about the major, you want to get, guidance about particular courses, how you're thinking about approaching essentially the different courses you're choosing for your major, your specialization, what courses make sense for meeting particular requirements. Those are great questions to direct towards Adam, who's our CS major advisor. If instead you're minoring in CS, not majoring in CS, you would instead be directing those questions to Jessica Garza, who's our CS minor advisor. Jessica is also great if you have any registration issues, any problems, signing up for particular classes. Please direct those questions towards Jess. Any other questions, and including any of the things above, I'm always happy to take these questions. One of the great parts of being a faculty member is getting to know students in our major. Those who share my interests and those who have very different interests within computer science. I'm happy to take any questions about the undergraduate program and or your CS career at any points. But some of the resources, we have an undergraduate mailing list that if you're planning to take any computer science courses, which presumably is why you're at this webinar, please sign up for that. So this undergraduate mailing list is a great way to hear about what's going on in the department. Next page was actually Adam, why don't I have you talk a little bit about course info since you built it.
Sure thing. So the course info website that's listed as the second bullet on this slide is our own internal site for managing the schedule. We basically make the academic year schedule 1 year at a time. So if you go to the URL there at courseinfo.cs.uchicago.edu, you will see the planned schedule for autumn, winter, spring of this upcoming year, and that's actually the only place that you can see that. The college at large doesn't publicize the entire academic year at once, but on this site, you can see what we have planned for the whole year. Now, emphasis on the word planned because it is often the case that we have last minute changes right before the quarter starts. So the winter and spring schedules for 27 are not fully set in stone, but they're pretty darn close, and they're close enough for you to start to do planning. So I would encourage everyone to check the course info site frequently. It's very up to date and can give you some insight into how you might spend your year.
Thanks, Adam. The third bullet, the CS College Catalog. This is, go to collegecatalog.uchicago.edu/the college/computer science. There you see a couple of things. Towards the bottom of the page, you're going to see course descriptions and prerequisites for all of the courses that, we may be offering. But the top of the page is going to be what, as you're coming into the program, seems like an overwhelming amount of information about what counts for what are the requirements, for instance, that I summarized through those diagrams earlier today. And, it's going to seem very overwhelming. This is when you're looking for the final, final answers on what counts for what, the College Catalog is a great place to start. And then, if you're confused by any parts of the College Catalog or your question isn't answered, that's a great time to reach out to me, or Adam if you're a major, or Jess if you're a minor. This Stellic, actually, Adam, would you like to talk about Stellic as well?
I'm not super qualified to
Okay,
talk about Stellic,
yeah.
but I can say a few words. It's
Sure.
basically a planning system where uh, you can sketch out long range plans. It tracks how you're doing in your various programs. It's often the case that people are CS majors and some other kind of major, whether it's chemistry or stats or whatever, and you get a view of how much progress you've made towards your degrees as part of the Stellic system. I don't actually work with it directly, so I don't know if my co-speakers might have more to say about Stellic.
I don't have more to say, but I'm going to turn it over to Borja to talk a bit about the CS student research resource guide.
Yeah, so we have a site that sort of collects a lot of shared like tutorials, materials, instructions that are shared by a number of classes. So if you do want to get a head start on, familiarizing yourself with Linux, with Git, with, how the various like CS computing environments that we might use in many of our classes, that is the website you can go to kind of like read through all of that. We haven't sort of like fully updated it for next year, so it might still undergo some revisions. But I think as far as again, if you want to do stuff like start getting familiar with Linux, with Git, etc., there's tutorials there, and you can use those to get up to speed.
Great. And the last bullet point we have here is our frequently asked questions page. And so this contains answers to a number of frequently asked questions about the major. And again, if you have a question that's not answered there, we'd be very happy to hear from you and provide answers. All right. So, in advance of that, I'm going to turn it over to Adam to give a couple of answers to a couple of the most frequently asked questions.
Absolutely. I will have to interrupt myself because I was furiously typing an answer in the Q&A, which I'll pause. But to the student who asked about AI focused majors, you just wait a few more minutes for me to complete my answer. So we've already mentioned courseinfo.cs is the place to look for CS course information a little bit faster than you can see elsewhere. Which computer should I buy? That's a question I often get. First of all, I want to make it clear that you can buy no computer at all. It's very rare for our students not to have a computer. But as far as the CS major is concerned, we can fully support all the coursework you need to do in the CS major if you only use our computers. We have enough computers, we have enough places you can use them that you could do all your coursework exclusively on our computers and not spend a penny on a computer of your own. Again, that rarely, if ever, happens. Also, our computers tend not to be available 24/7 the way your own computer could be. But if you have Mac, Linux, or Windows, you are going to be fine. Particularly Windows, the sub bullet point here about Windows subsystem for Linux. Since the advent of that, it basically means we can give instructions that are largely identical to any student who has any computer in any of these three families, and things tend to work just fine. There are a few corner cases. I think Windows is not as good at playing sound in Python as some of the other platforms are, but apart from a few asterisks and corner cases like that, you are going to be absolutely fine with any kind of computer. It might also be the case that I'm just making this up, but maybe Windows works for almost everything you have to do, but you have to pop into a CS computer lab and use Macintosh occasionally for some special purpose. That's absolutely something you can plan on doing. So I would encourage you to get whatever computer you want, or just bring whatever computer you have available, and we'll help you get up to speed and make sure you can do what we ask you to do. It's also the case that, geez, I want to say all of our software, I'm not sure that's strictly true, but just about everything we use is free software that doesn't require anyone to buy anything or pay a subscription for anything. So you will be able to obtain whatever you need on any kind of computer. How many courses per quarter? Well, majors are 14 or 15. Uh, you have 12 quarters with us, barring special cases like flying off to Barcelona for a quarter. But assuming you have about 12 sorry, 12 quarters on campus, you will be able to take one course per quarter with a few courses devoted to two computer science courses. I would say the CS major is very doable on its own without overloading. Where it gets hard is when people do a computer science major and a physics major and a minor in economics. Then things can start to get really crowded, and you will have to make those determinations when you get here. Thankfully, we college advising to help with those kind of larger questions outside of CS. I would say that making a plan where you say to yourself, well, I'll just coast along and then I'll take 8 computer science courses in my final 2 quarters. No one should make any plan like that. For one, even if you were able to get into 4CS courses, which is a big if, it would be a very unpleasant, overwhelming experience. But it might also be the case that you just couldn't get seats in the courses that you need. So no one should actually make a plan that requires them to put in a superhuman effort in a particular quarter. You want to get started early, and you want to basically be going along at a rate of 1 or 2 courses per quarter. Now, having said that, if you need to take 3 courses in your very last quarter in order to complete your degree, we will very, very often find a way to make that happen for you. And it's not fatal if you have to take 3. We don't want anyone to plan on it, though. And when should you start taking theory courses? Well, the slide says it no later than your 3rd year. What you don't want to be a situation where you're taking theory courses in your very last quarter in order to squeeze your way through the door on the way out. That's not good. It has happened, but it's nothing that anyone should plan on doing.
Great. So we have a number of Q&A questions in the Q&A section of Zoom that have been already answered. Let's see. I see, Carrie, if you want to answer live question about where to find the recording.
Yes, so this entire session is being recorded. It will be posted on the summer webinar series webpage, which is the same webpage that you use to sign up to attend today's session. Other webinars throughout the summer are also posted there, and they're usually posted within a couple of days.
Great. And so we can ask some of these questions, answer some also live. I don't actually, Adam and Borja, are there any of the questions you've already answered in the chat that you'd actually like to answer live as well to reinforce?
So given that we're on this slide with this beautiful logo, someone asked right at the beginning of the webinar, that's again at the very first slide we did have a little note at the bottom that says winner of the t-shirt contest, Elena Clays, who is one of our Masters in Computer Science students. So in case you're curious, we do run a yearly t-shirt design contest, student design contest. This is this year's winner. If you go to the answered questions in the Zoom Q&A, you can find the URL where you can buy, if you want to buy a t-shirt, with this logo or past logos. I'm wearing the 2022 winner of the t-shirt contest. You can get t-shirts and you can get mugs, notebooks, beach towels. I know for a fact that there's at least one person out there who has a UChicago CS beach towel. So that you can find that in the answers to the Q&A on Zoom.
Someone is saying that Mac is better for the Python ecosystem, less painful. I would actually push back gently on that and say the least painful ecosystem, at least in my experience for doing Python development, is Linux, which everything seems to work on immediately. People might have different experiences, but I think either Linux, Mac, or Windows is going to be absolutely fine for all of your needs in CS.
Yeah, I mean, Adam and Borja and I all teach courses regularly in the introductory sequence, and we see students on all 3 platforms. And we represent kind of a diversity of different platforms ourselves. Yeah, Adam, I guess you already started answering a question about kind of an AI major. If you want to actually kind of say a little bit more about that, and then I'll follow you to add a few more things. That'd be great.
Well, please jump in if anyone knows otherwise. But someone asked, I believe from the wording of the question, I couldn't quite tell, but it seemed a student was asking if there's a plan to have an AI major. And to my knowledge, there is no plan to have an AI major, but uh, between computer science and statistics and probably some other fields as well, including math, you can become an absolute expert in artificial intelligence. We have a lot of local expertise in the CS department. We have many people who are pushing ahead on the frontiers of AI and machine learning. It seems more and more faculty, even if they didn't come that way, people are bending in that direction. And then statistics is, of course, the home of a lot of the ideas that made the AI systems possible. So if you come here and hammer a bunch of stats courses, a bunch of AI focused courses within the computer science department, and possibly some other courses outside, you are going to become an expert in AI. We absolutely do offer that, just not under the name AI major.
Yeah, yeah, I would strongly concur with everything Adam said, and I think I would even go further and say, yeah, we've had students not under that exact name, but effectively majoring in AI in our department for many years, because as Adam said, a lot of the really fundamental aspects of machine learning, of artificial intelligence, how do you model data? How do you learn from data? How do you basically deal with out of distribution data? How do you apply AI to science? For instance, UChicago has a huge effort in AI for sciences, both, in our department, in the statistics department at Argonne National Labs, which is affiliated with the university. We have lots of expertise in human AI interaction. And yeah, lots of us, including myself, have published, AI papers over the years. My own interests are often in kind of ethics and humanity and values in AI. And so, yeah, there are lots of opportunities. There are no plans. Someone would have told me if there were plans, presumably, to offer something under the name AI. But yeah, essentially, computer science is probably, I would argue the best place on campus to be focusing on AI. That said, there's lots of interest. In kind of AI adjacent topics from across the university. So, for instance, actually, this earlier this year, I gave a guest lecture on the history of AI in a creative writing class taught by the writer Julie Irumwanya, where the students were imagining kind of post AI futures. And so there's a lot of interest in AI at the university across disciplines. There's a whole series of AI pillars that have been stood up by the university. And yeah, in short, you're in the right place. Borja, Adam, or Carrie, any other questions you want to answer live?
Yes, I had just started typing the answer to one of these. Borja, maybe you want to elaborate. Will taking the August sitting of the placement exam affect my placement as results will come out after pre-reg? How would pre-reg work then? Like, what's your advice?
So if you take I assume this is the CS2 exam because again, we're not having any more sittings of the CS1 exam until September. Yes, you would miss the boat for pre-registration, but let's say that you do place into CS 143. There's typically, and Adam and Blaze can correct me on this, but there's typically not a ton of contention for seats in CS 143 in the autumn. So even if you miss the pre-registration, for the autumn, you should be able to add drop into the class if you place into CS 143. If you place into CS 142, CS 142 isn't offered in the autumn, so it's not like you would be missing out on anything. That placement obviously would carry over into the winter, and you could take CS 142 in the winter. But Adam, you want to chime in on how easy or hard it is to get into 143 in the autumn?
Yes, I will strengthen what you said and say that going on the last few years patterns, there are always seats available in 143. It's been this way for several years, and given the early results we have, it will continue to be this way in 2026. So if you place into 143, you should proceed with full confidence that you'll be able to take it in the autumn quarter if you decide to. Someone is asking in if 141 usually fills up in the autumn. It usually fills up eventually, but I think it's not nearly as hard to get into 141 as it used to be. If we looked at our numbers right now, we would see many open seats. Of course, we don't have the incoming students having registered yet, but you should have optimism to be able to get a seat in 141 if you want one. You may not always be able to get it at exactly the time that you want because some time slots are more popular than others. But I would say high confidence, that's not a promise. But in the last few years, we've been able to seat pretty much everyone who wants to get in 141. And when the dust finally settles, usually the class is either full or within a few students are being full. Borja, I think you are the person among us who has the most experience connecting to Argonne. There's a question outstanding about our opportunities for undergrads at Argonne. Do you know anything about that?
I don't know about exact opportunities, but I will make a broad statement that, we do have a number of faculty members who have joint appointments with Argonne, including my PhD advisor. I got my PhD here at the University of Chicago. And I would go to Argonne frequently, and I would work with people at Argonne, pretty frequently for my own research and my own work. I've definitely heard of a number of undergrads who have gotten like internships at Argonne, or who work with faculty members that work with, projects at Argonne, or with researchers at Argonne. I'd say it is more common if you're going to do some sort of research experience. It's usually more common to have that experience on campus, but there's definitely very strong ties to Argonne, including faculty members in the department who have actual joint appointments with Argonne National Lab. Blaise, I don't know if you have any insights
Yeah.
into this.
Yeah, I'll add a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I think Borja's PhD advisor, Ian Foster, is in fact the division director of Argonne's data science and learning division. And Ian is jointly appointed in our department, teaches a number of advanced electives. Lately, has been teaching a lot on kind of AI and science. Similarly, our colleague Rick Stevens is associate laboratory director at Argonne. For the Computing Environment and Life Sciences Directorate, has been in charge of the development of a lot of the supercomputers at Argonne. So, if you're interested in those areas, take a class with Ian, take a class with Rick. Our colleague Becca Willett runs a lot of the AI and science initiatives, and that's another great point of connection to Argonne National Labs. Yeah, we've had a lot of students. One of my former undergrads, Jamar, ended up doing an internship, right at the end of his undergraduate career at Argonne National Labs. Actually, one of my PhD students is currently at Argonne National Labs this summer. And this is actually her second summer at Argonne. And so, yeah, there are a lot of connections. And I think one of the best ways, as I had mentioned earlier, to get involved in kind of the cutting edge research that's happening in the field, including in our department and at Argonne, is to build these research relationships with faculty members in our department. And at U Chicago, more than at almost any other school, you have the opportunity to do so. Let's see, are there any others? It's
Keep those
um,
questions coming,
yeah,
people.
yeah. We're here. We're here to answer your questions. And
We're here. We're here for it.
If they have follow-up questions from here, should they go ahead and direct those to Adam and Jessica, in particular about majors, minors?
yeah, Borja, actually, if you could go back a few slides to the essentially where we have our email addresses. Great. Yeah, so if, kind of major advising, if you're really interested in kind of, getting some sense of like how to plan your major overall, I know Adam would be very happy to talk to you. Same with Jessica with the minor. I'm always happy to take, any questions where you're not sure where to send it. Please send them to me, and I'll either answer it myself or send you to the right place. And often we'll actually add colleagues onto these messages to make sure you get the advice you need.
Okay, if there aren't any additional questions, we'll wrap up. But again, remember this is recorded and will be saved on that summer webinar series webpage if you need to refer back. Or is there anything in particular about questions around placements?
I mean, if you are on the Canvas site, I think you probably already know, the various ways of, and getting questions answered. But certainly, if anyone has any questions about the placement exam, my email address is just my first name at uchicago.edu, borja@uchicago.edu. So folks can also just like reach me over email if they have any questions about the placement exams.
I did see one new question just popped in.
Is discrete math particularly hard if you have a limited programming background and take it using the math requirement? Well, discrete math is not a programming course. It's very much a pencil and paper math course. So I'm not sure programming really plays into it very much. And take it using the math requirement. I don't know what that clause means. Borja, you want to take a stab at it?
Yeah, I'm not.
You appear
I'm
to
not.
have claimed this question.
Oh no, I'm just claiming it so that we can then like move it to the
Uh-huh.
answered
I
column.
see. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't
what I
know.
will say is that, yeah, I mean, students, you come into U Chicago all the time with no background in programming and no background in the algorithmic and mathematical foundations of computer science, and not they don't just complete the major, they excel in the major. And so, it's kind of the less background you have, the more work you're going to put in. But we've structured the introductory sequence, the 140s, as well as 271, 272 to provide the foundations, assuming no background. Whereas, as we mentioned before, we have opportunities, for instance, with the honors discrete math course, the discrete math placement exam, to have students with a lot of proof-based mathematical background to kind of jump into a little further into the sequence and find an appropriate course. But yeah, I mean, overall, yeah. Oh, sorry, Adam.
I'm sorry, Blaze. I cut in. I would say about discrete math, I would think perhaps among all of our courses, that's the course that you will get the largest diversity of answers on if you ask someone if it was easy or hard. Some people think it's very easy, people think it's very hard, and everything in between. I think it's very individual and depends on, what your background is. It's pretty much all over the place, but it's a great course and you learn great things in it. So whether it's easy for you and you kind of glide through it, or whether it's a lot of work, it is going to be worth it one way or the other.
So since we're at, I think, just over the top of the hour, we our team of expert question answers has answered all the open questions. Again, we're happy to get more. I don't care if we might want to be wrapping up in the next minute or two, but I think what I would like to say is, thank you all for your interest in the computer science major, minor, or just department in general for taking courses. It's a really exciting time to be studying kind of the foundations of how you design systems. There's the kinds of things that are invented, developed in computer science departments like ours have been kind of taking over lots of parts of the world, society, human experience, as you've seen, and kind of understanding the good, the bad, and most importantly, how it all works, and how we can redesign it to be better. Computer science is a great place to be doing that, is arguably the place to be doing that. And yeah, we want to welcome you all to our department and look forward to getting to know all of you in the coming years.
I would like to echo what Blaze said and share my gratitude. I would like to thank everyone who took their time on a summer afternoon to come and spend an hour with us. We are excited to be your teachers. If you invest in us, we will gladly invest in you. And we don't take your interest in computer science for granted. So thank you for being interested enough to be here. And we look forward to seeing you in the fall.
All right, Borja, if you don't have any final last words, we can wrap up and thank everybody for their time.
I mean, I will just echo what Blaze and Adam have said. I think they've already said it beautifully.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining. I'm so glad you've been paying attention to the variety of summer webinars that are available to you. Stay tuned for more. There are still more to come. Thank you.